So you remember when I said that these books were getting longer? Oh my word. This book. So Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is easily double, most likely triple, the length of the other books so far. Which, again, as an avid reader, made me happy, but we went from about 4 to 5 hours a book to, I think this one took me about 8 hours to finish. But it was no less easy to put down. Once I picked it up, I just got sucked in, and I'm pretty sure, again, I read it in about a day. Well, I think I read it in 2 days. If you're counting, I took it to work with me. I read it kind of overnight. I'd clean house. I put it down to clean house, come back, read it. So over a broken 2 to 3 days, I completed this book. I know I said number 3 up to the point was my favorite, new favorite. A few episodes back, I started talking about divination a little bit and my thoughts on it being in the Harry Potter series. I just realized that it may have been on the wrong book, so if it was, I apologize. I have filmed the series all in one day, up to book 4, because I have read all these and I need to get them back to Zach, who let me borrow them. And I'm sure by this point, because these videos are coming out weeks apart, or a week apart, you've probably already yelled at me in the comments if I was wrong. If I wasn't wrong, then we're good. But if I was wrong, I apologize. I might have been a book off on the divination. I can't remember now. I got distracted halfway through recording, and now I don't remember which book I was talking about and if that book was the one that had divination in it. Anyway, you know what I meant. So back to Goblet of Fire. By far the most heart-wrenching one for me yet. I really, really enjoyed the culmination of this story. And I'm not going to get into spoilers. I say it every week. I'm not getting into spoilers. I'm not going to talk about the storyline itself. This is just my reaction to the storyline. And let me tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It is my new favorite. It has the most characters of all the books so far, and they are all different. They all have a different feel. They all have a different way of speaking. They are consistent. There is dealing with prejudice and well, a little bit of prejudice and like more or less initial reactions to someone and how those initial reactions could be right or wrong. Competition. I really enjoyed how far this book went into the culture of the wizard world. I am a big fan of built worlds. One of my favorite TV series is The Last Airbender, and that universe is so well connected and well written. I'm getting that same vibe, maybe to a lesser degree because you can only get so much in a book, and Harry Potter doesn't travel around as much, except for in this book. This book, there was plenty of culture. But it was one of those things that I really enjoyed seeing more of the world in a relatable way, because it took me a minute. Halfway through the book, I realized, and it's not J.K. Rowling's fault. I could have been a little bit dense, but it was one of those things where I'm sitting there and I was reading through it and I was like, wait a second, these are based off of actual like nations in our world today, and what the differences would be between wizards from America versus wizards from, Russia, or how they would be taught, how they would have been raised, how, their competitive spirit would be different. And that was fun for me to see how another person put that together in her head. And I thought it was a very creative book as far as mixing a fictional world with the real world in a way that didn't make this story any more believable, which I'm loving that is still staying very fantastical. That being said, this was by far my favorite story of the 4 I have read. It was the most heart-wrenching. It was the scariest, even as an adult. This was as an adult, I always approach the beginning of the book with, and I said this a couple weeks ago, the mindset of Matilda, where the adults are portrayed as so abusive and so stupid that it can't be real. They can't be real adults. But maybe from a now 14-year-old's perspective, no, 13, 11, 12, 13, 14, yeah, 14-year-old. From a 14-year-old's perspective, that might be how it feels, but you know deep down it's not true. But once Harry gets into the wizard world, which is the fake world, things make more sense. This one actually gets into the politics of this fake world, and it's very realistic to today's politics, in a way that can't be real. It was very creative and I loved it. But because this fantasy world has a much more realistic feel than the real world, what happens in this fantasy world, it feels more real. It's more relatable. The fear is real in this book. And I liked that. It's been a long time since I have, been drawn to the same fear as the character, more or less. I mean, obviously as a reader, this isn't the end of the story. There's more coming. There's something. This is Harry Potter. There's 7 more books, or there's 7 books total. There's 3 more books. This isn't the end. Like, as a reader, you have that mindset and that's always in the back of your mind. But I felt with Harry Potter in this book. And I love things that make me connect. So, with that being said, I would, if my 11-year-old had started with the first book and was powering through and was still 11 when he got to this book, I would be a little bit weary about letting him read this one because this one is very heavy. I really enjoyed it. As an adult, I do recommend having conversations with kids who have read it, just to make sure that they're okay with what they read. It's that they're not. It doesn't leave them feeling sad or scared. This is one of the first times. So one of my gripings. It's not really a griping, but it sort of is that the one unbelievable characteristic of these books, besides the adults in the regular London, is that Harry Potter doesn't always seem to be emotionally affected by what he goes through. He does seem to be resilient, and it does, like, in the moment grip you of what's going on. But often in the first 3 books, I was left feeling like if I would have expected a kid of Harry Potter's age to have a much different reaction after the fact of what he just went through. Like, he seems to rebound very quickly, and he doesn't seem to learn a whole lot about how to handle the situations he finds himself in, aside from gaining skill that he can use the next time it happens. That is one unbelievable characteristic of this series, which, again, being written for kids, I can ignore, because kids don't always need to be, especially with books that are supposed to be for enjoyment, they don't need to be dragged down by emotional baggage. I get that. I was very pleased with how Harry Potter ended on this book, as a character, emotionally, physically. He was a little bit more real to me in this book, and not just a character who could take a beating. I liked that. This is the last book I've read to this point. So if there's a break in this series, it's just because I haven't gotten a chance to get my hand on the next 3 books. I'll probably read through them really quickly and do the same thing I just did here, where I read 4 books and then recorded 4 videos in one day. But at this point, this is the very last book I have read to date, and I am more drawn into the series now than I was on the last book. And they've gotten better. Like, so far, every book has been my new favorite book of the series. This is no exception. This is my new favorite book of the series. They just get better. And that's, as a writer, I understand that it's because you got more practice, you have more in your head. Holes are being filled in. I adore the fact that there's one teacher role that can't stay filled. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, in my experience, there's one of those roles in every real life school. So it makes me giggle. There's always one role that nobody wants and you can't keep a teacher in. For me, it was science in my high school. We had a different science teacher every time we came in. It was just fun. It just made me giggle to see that part of real life shown in here. And that might not be most people's struggle. You know, most of you guys watching this, you probably had more of the problem that you couldn't keep friends in the same class or in the same school. Me is I couldn't keep teachers in the same school. So that was fun. Again, I really loved the cultural aspect. I loved the believability of the characters. I loved the correlation to the real world without it feeling like real world. It still felt like a fantasy story, and so I was less likely to believe it and try things, and more likely to just enjoy the book and the story for what it was. This was one of the more sad books and fearful books, and I loved it. As an adult, it definitely kept me gripped. It kept me in. It was more believable as far as adult reactions and kid reactions. It also, strangely, made me more appreciative of Harry's plight with the Dudley, with Dudley and the Dursleys. Without spoilers, without saying much, the ending of this book, I was very much like, the poor kid's been through enough, let him stay somewhere else. And then I started, it actually brought out the reason why he keeps having to go back to the Dursleys. And I like that. Like, it was one of those things, like, could Hogwarts, could Professor Dumbledore, he's not dumb, trust me, Professor Dumbledore have done a better job or just changed something to let Harry have a better summer? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. It's one of those things that I kind of pick up these books expecting the first thing to be, how bad are the Dursleys this year? I think it's fun. It's funny to me because it's so obviously fake. It's funny. I love it. But at the same time, after this book, I was very much like, give the kid a break. Don't send him back. Let him do something else with summer. Let him stay at Hogwarts. You know, whatever it takes, don't send him back. He's been through enough. Again, I am very appreciative of an author who can make me feel that for a character that doesn't exist in a world that doesn't exist. So that is my thoughts behind the Goblet of Fire. See you next time.